I do not see anything special in Trevor Lawrence.
They're below Big Ten level at some point.
They are tearing it up right now, absolutely just killing it.
When you're able to defend and you're able to knock down shots at the clip they have, they can beat anybody.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Keeping Score with Laney and Dylan, a podcast show dedicated to bringing analysis of Rutgers sports and sports around the country. I'm Laney.
And I'm Dylan.
And in today's episode, we are welcomed by our sports writers, Jack and Shaunak, to discuss the latest on Rutgers men's and women's basketball and preview the NFL's already chaotic offseason. So let's get started with Rutgers women's basketball. I mean, they are tearing it up right now, absolutely just killing it, 5-game winning streak. I believe they just got ranked as well this afternoon. How are we feeling about the women's team?
Yeah, I actually had the luxury of commentating their game against Minnesota, and you would not make the suggestion that this team missed a game if you saw them play. Like, they are just really in stride. They've been playing so well. Diamond Johnson has, really one of Steve Vivian Stringer's best recruiting hauls. She was the number 6 player in the country. She's now the top 3-point shooter in the nation. She is doing amazing. And Arella Garantes and really the rest of the starting lineup just stepping up so much. This is a team where after their COVID break, we kind of saw them needing a big scenario to get in the tournament. They're making that happen as we speak. If they keep playing like this, there's going to be no doubts that they're going to be in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I mean, just really big wins. I mean, you look at the 5-game winning streak, they're not, 2-point, 3-point, 5. They're all double digit. I mean, they got 78-62, 70-54 over a ranked Northwestern teams. And then the latest game on Saturday, 75-46. I mean, just pouring it on. So it's really just team basketball. Just a hell of a coaching job by Coach Stringer. And again, Arella and Diamond just really stepping up to the plate. But, it goes beyond those two. It's just, again, like a team effort.
Every time I go and talk about the women's basketball team or checking on how they're doing, it's always like the same 3 people that always point out to me. It's Arella Goriantes, it's Diamond Johnson, and it's Takia Mack every time. And when you have 3 scorers that are able to put the ball in the basket like they're able to, I mean, it just opens up your offense so much. I mean, we'll talk about the men's team in a little bit, but their scoring problems are pretty highlighted. And, when you have a bunch of scorers on your team, it just opens up so many things for the offense. You can put up a whole bunch of points and blow teams out like we're seeing with this women's team.
Yeah, their starters, I mean, they really know how to get things going. I know in previous episodes we were kind of talking about how it seems to be the same players playing full games. And with men's, we're not really completely used to seeing that. But with this women's team, it's like they only really need like their top 4 or 5 people, and they get it done, just the 5 of them. And it's like every single night they go out and they still put up the same effort and the same sort of execution.
I will add though, like 5 straight games winning by double digits like they've had, any sport, that's hard, especially basketball in conference play like this, where every team knows everyone and you can game plan a lot better than maybe you could like in like an NBA setting. It's very impressive when you're able to roll teams like this.
Yeah, I just pulled up a stat. Apparently Rutgers, their last 5 games, they won by an average of 22.5 points. And this has all been Big Ten competition. They played a ranked team. I just see Vivian Stringer. I respect her so much because she will full court press the entire basketball game. They could be up by 30 and she'll still full court press. I love it. One of my favorite coaches at Rutgers.
So coming up these next couple games, again, it's in crunch time for them. And, especially with the tournament coming up, what do they really have to just continue doing to be able to solidify a spot in that tournament?
Continue just being annoying. Like, they just annoy every team they play because they are so active on defense. I was talking about the Minnesota game before. During the Minnesota game, they made Minnesota register 2 straight 5-second violations trying to inbound the ball. I, as a basketball fan, have never seen that before in my entire life. This Rutgers team, every time the other team brings the ball down the court, they're active. They're running through the passing lanes, trying to get steals. They're a team. They lead the league they lead the nation in steals. Excuse me. So they just need to keep being active on defense. And, if their shots keep falling, if Diamond Johnson keeps shooting at this percentage, they're going to be a really dangerous team.
They got all the pieces. They have a lot of scoring on the offensive end. Like Dylan, you said, they're able to, harass you on defense. I've never seen 2 straight 5-second violations either. When you're able to defend and you're able to knock down shots at the clip they have, they can beat anybody. So, everything's in front of them for the women's basketball team.
Yeah, I mean, just, continue to play team basketball. Really, what's key for this team is 3-point shooting. I mean, you're talking about a 40% 3-point shooting team as a whole. That's not easy to do, even in today's game. So continue to be annoying on defense, as we pointed out, but also, continue to stay sharp from outside the arc.
So on the other side of things with the men's basketball team, a little bit different conversation we're going to have about them coming off their loss to Maryland. Pretty frustrating loss. We really only had Baker and Jacob Young kind of show up for that team. Players like McConnell and Johnson and Harper Jr. just did not show up, weren't on their A game, and ultimately led to Rutgers kind of dropping the ball and falling to Maryland.
This was such a typical Rutgers loss. Like, if they were going to lose in one way, it was going to be because they're going to shoot terribly. That was pretty much it. Their shooting has just been exponentially bad. Like, it has been something that we've understood as fans, like pretty much this year, even last year with the Quasi, they still weren't great shooting, but it has just gotten to a point this year where it is just like they're below Big Ten level at some points. Like Ron this past month has been like exceptionally like cold. And I don't understand it. They're getting cold at the absolute worst time. Like, this was seen as a game that Rutgers, really had the handle on. And now it looks like they're going to have to win either 2 of their last 3, or they're going to have to win 1 and then win a game in the Big Ten to, really secure their spot in the tournament. So really bringing it down to the wire again, Rutgers, just like you did last year.
Yeah, I mean, my issue with this team right now, or at least one of my issues with this team right now, is the rather cold play of Ron Harper Jr. We saw at the beginning of the season where, in wins over Illinois and Syracuse, Ron Harper was leading the team. He's taking charge. He was putting up at least 20 points in those big games. And unfortunately, we haven't seen that same kind of play pretty much since the beginning of 2021. This isn't a team whose struggles only rely on one player. But I got to say, as talented as Ron Harper is, their struggles are predominantly because of his struggles. I don't want to be too harsh, but, he's a star player, and it's time for him to start playing like it.
I have a lot to say about this game because I was fortunate enough to be there. I'll start by saying, you hear a lot from the player perspective, the coach perspective, the announcer perspective about how games have been changed without any fans there. And you've heard around that, Rutgers has been especially affected because of how great the rack is usually with a whole host of fans there. And yesterday I really got to experience that. You really have to create your own energy. And, there's a lot of points during that game where Maryland had the momentum and their bench was going crazy and Rutgers couldn't really get that energy going. But at the same time, the effort will still always be there. The defense will still always be there. It's just the fact of the matter is we just cannot shoot the ball at an effective clip most games. And it affects the offense, as you see. One person I'll point out that it might affect the most or among the most is Paul Mulcahy. Paul Mulcahy is one of those guys that you put in the pick and roll and he excels. He'll be able to make plays for other players. He'll be able to throw out Miles Johnson, make a play by himself. And he's just not having that space because teams are just packing in the paint and he's not able to create for other players because no one can shoot. So everything's still in front of them. They have to win their last 2 or the last 3 games, I believe, in order to feel comfortable going into the tournament. they're throwing it down. They're bringing it down to the wire. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's nothing Rutgers does better than keep everybody on their toes. We're all very familiar with RU Screw. Who knows? It definitely leaks into athletics sometimes. But going forward, obviously, they're going to have to scoring wins. Next couple of games, obviously, they're pretty important. So moving on to the NFL, I know that Dylan particularly has a lot to say about Carson Wentz. I know you're very opinionated on him. I'll let you do your thing, Dylan. What do you have to say about Carson Wentz?
Okay, so the only person who won, if you don't know, Carson Wentz was traded to the Indianapolis Colts, I believe, for a third and a second, and I think those could turn into a second and a first, depending on how much he plays next year. But the only team that won in that trade is no team, because Carson Wentz won, because the Eagles are still going to take like $40 million in dead cap space. The Colts went from a team with a question mark at quarterback to a team with a question mark at quarterback and gave up draft picks. I understand this is the same Carson Wentz that was an MVP candidate a few years ago, but this is the same Carson Wentz that led the league in turnovers just last year. A bad system hurts you. And I personally think Carson Wentz has regressed to the point where he's not going to be that MVP candidate. You know, he has a lot of weapons and he has a lot of talent now. So if he proves me wrong, he proves me wrong. But you know, I'm an NFC East guy, so I've been watching it very closely the past few years, and you know, not a lot of good things to say.
Here's my take on Carson Wentz, and you know, it's a bit loaded. But when you look at Carson Wentz's 2020 season, yeah, it sucked, and you know, it was historically bad. But so were the Eagles. You know, we're looking at a 4-11-1 team that struggled even with Jalen Hurts outside of maybe the first half of their game against the Saints and half or 3/4 of game against the Cardinals. But, you know, you look at how he played against the Cowboys and the season finale where he got pulled against Washington, he wasn't that hot. So, yeah, no, a lot to blame on Carson Wentz for what happened to the 2020 Eagles. But the team as a whole was not good. Now you look at what he's done the rest of his career, 2017 MVP, 2018 off of an ACL. Yeah, the record wasn't that great, but he still goes 21 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. The next year, without a receiver that surpassed 500 yards, he goes 9-7, gets on the division, throws 4,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. A lot of good with very little to work with. So we're talking about a guy that made wine from water for the better part of his career. And that was with guys that, you know, weren't cooperating. Alshon Jeffrey had some things to say behind his back. But now he's going into a system that he's familiar with Frank Reich, a guy who he had actually worked with in 2017. So this is all good for him. And I think when you said that neither team won, I think both teams win, because for the Eagles, yeah, they take a big cap hit, but they're also not paying him for whatever the next 3-4 years that he was scheduled to be paid for. For the Colts, this was a team that was a game away from winning the division last season. I mean, they already made the playoffs last season, but now, and that was with Phillip Rivers. Now they have Carson Wentz, who could potentially be revamped and, you know, turn him into a Super Bowl contender. So I think everyone wins here.
Yeah, Shaunak, you basically said it all. You know, I'm not the biggest Carson Wentz fan, but I recognize that the guy has talent. And in the NFL, more so than other sports, the system really dictates how good a player might be in the NFL. And as much as I don't like the Eagles, they were not a very good offense. They were not a very good receiving core of these past couple of seasons. And, you know, when you don't have those type of weapons on offense, it just leads to the detriment of your team. You guys are 4-11-1 last year. And one more thing I'll add about Carson Wentz is that he's only 28. I mean, we're not talking about a guy who's like in the twilight of his career, like Tom Brady, who's like 55 at this point. He's got time to grow. I mean, look at like guys like Russell Wilson. They're reinventing themselves at like 31, 32 years old. So plenty of time for him to reinvent his career. He's got a great system now in Indianapolis. Like you said, Shaunak, they're a really good team. They played with Phillip Rivers last year and nearly won a playoff game. So, you know, it's looking up for Carson Wentz. Since he's not in the NFC East anymore, I'll be more tolerable of him, and I think I'll root for him a little bit more. Hopefully he succeeds.
I definitely agree he'll be a lot more tolerable outside of Philadelphia, as most players are.
It's hard to like anybody when they play in Philadelphia, at least in my opinion. Sorry for the people that like Philadelphia sports. It's just, anyways, the draft, big topic of conversation, Trevor Lawrence, all that jazz. Unfortunately, my Jets forgot how to do the thing that they know how to do so well, aka losing. They forgot how to lose. So they're in a little bit of a worse off position than I would have liked them to be. Where do you guys think people are going to end up? How do you think it's going to go? Please give me your thoughts.
I don't know, Laney. According to a couple draft scouts, you might be in the best situation because I cannot believe I've started to see this, but from verified accounts, I've seen tweets from NFL scouting departments that say they see Patrick Mahomes and Zach Wilson and that he is their one. I can't confirm, what team that is. I am very skeptical of that because we've really been sold, and I think the scouts have been sold too, on Trevor Lawrence being, the generational quarterback. The best prospects is Andrew Luck, and Andrew Luck was the best prospect since Peyton Manning, and it goes on and on. And I think the Jets are either going to end up with Zach Wilson or Deshaun Watson, honestly. I mean, we'll talk more about that in a little while, but I could see Fields going, I think Atlanta picks 4th. He'll probably go there. That's what I would assume. So I'd say Lawrence, Wilson, and or trade Fields. And I don't know what happens if there is a trade. I don't know what happens to Wilson and Fields. That would be interesting because I know the Falcons, but I'm not sure who else in the top 5 or top 7 would need a quarterback who could get Fields or Wilson. But interesting class. There's 5 or 6 quarterbacks who can be taken in the first 64 picks. It'll be exciting to see.
So I'm gonna drop a bomb on you guys, and it's gonna be controversial, but I do not see anything special in Trevor Lawrence. He's not that good. I said it. He'll go number 1, no doubt, but I don't see him having a successful NFL career. I don't see the same. I see the same for Zach Wilson. He's not that special. The most successful quarterback I see in this class is Justin Fields. I see a guy that battled through a serious rib injury in the semifinal. This guy is a leader. He's a competitor. This guy wills his team to success, even though the championship did not reflect that. But that was also against a historically great Alabama team. And then I see Trey Lance. I think he's better than Zach Wilson. I think he should be compared to having that Mahomes potential. And those are my, not ranking wise, but I think I see those two having the most successful NFL careers.
Yeah, if we're talking about draft order, I think Trevor Lawrence will obviously go first, despite what you think about him. And then Zach Wilson will most likely go second, and then Justin Fields will probably go last. Or Justin Fields and those 3 people of those 3 people will probably go last. But I wanted to point something out of another QB prospect that I saw. I got a notification about. It says, "Hi, Devontae Smith prefers Mac Jones over Tua Tagovailoa. He said he was bold and definitive in choosing Mac Jones over Tua Tagovailoa." So make what you will about that information, but when the Heisman-winning wide receiver says that he prefers his new quarterback over the old quarterback of Tua, I mean, that might create some buzz for Mac Jones. I heard his name attached to the Patriots, maybe in a mid-round selection, Mac Jones could get a look and maybe fall into a successful career there.
Well, I know Dylan mentioned him kind of briefly. Deshaun Watson, nobody really knows. It's kind of up in the air. As I've seen things about him with the Jets, I take everything with a grain of salt. Who knows where he's going to end up? Do you guys have any really strong thoughts on where he's going to land?
I don't know about where he's going to land, but I can tell you where he'd be best suited, and that's in Denver. They have a trio of amazing receivers, Hamler, Sutton, and Judy. And then they got a solid backfield with Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay. And then they got Noah Fant. So, I mean, he could not handpick a better situation to go in than Denver. Ultimately, I feel like he's going to go to the Jets. And if he didn't have a great time in Houston, I hate to say it, but he won't have a great time with the Jets. But like I said, Denver would be the best path to success for Deshaun.
I like the Denver fit. That's a very interesting pick. That's not something that like I would have thought of, but they have a lot of weapons out there. I think the best fit for Deshaun is like where they said he originally wanted to go, which is Miami. You know, I really think as much as Tua, you know, does have time to develop, I think, you know, he didn't look like a world beater last year. And sometimes Deshaun Watson, you know, he really has the skill. If he has the weapons, I think he has the skill to do a lot of interesting things. And throwing to guys like Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki and, you know, having guys like Myles Gaskin come out the backfield. I really think with the defense too, I think Miami would be the best fit. I think they have the assets to get him, obviously the number 3 pick, possibly Tua Tagovailoa. It'll be interesting. You know, it's obviously all how much Miami believes in Tua and how much they value Deshaun Watson, but we'll see. I could see him ending up at the Jets too, just because the Jets have the draft capital to do so.
Yeah, another interesting place that I've heard a lot is San Francisco. I mean, if San Francisco's able to not like gut their entire roster getting Deshaun Watson, they've got a Super Bowl ready team. You know, they have pretty good old line. They have Deebo Samuel there as a wide receiver. Maybe not as strong as a wide receiver corps as like, you know, the Broncos might have. I also like the Broncos pick too. But their defense is ready made. They got Nick Bosa, they got Fred Warner. That entire defensive line is just killer when they're healthy. So, you know, they were devastated by injuries last year, but there's no reason not to believe that they'll be right back into the thick of things. And even with Deshaun Watson, the sky's the limit for the San Francisco 49ers with the top 5 quarterback.
And that's all for today. Make sure to join us next time on Keeping Score for more sports updates. And make sure to follow the Daily Targum on our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for more content.